Hello, and welcome to this little video that I thought I'd put together for the Teasses estate social media. You may have learned that we've had to cancel our foraging workshop, which is really unfortunate because we have so much foraging to share with you, and of course we were going to include a tasty meal, but hopefully that will be postponed and we can reschedule something again this summer. But while I'm out walking the dog, I thought I would just show off some of the things that you can forage in your local area. Here we've got an extensive amount of forest, woodland, burns, grass, pasture, and because it's all totally organic, I can be fairly sure that it's safe to pick and eat. So I'm going to take a wander up through one of our woodlands here within the gardens and pick out some delicious things, delicious treats that are just growing naturally. And this is an ideal time for it because you have all the lovely spring flowers coming out in the woods, and of course wild garlic is the headliner for this time of year. This beautiful little flower is wild violet, and actually it's my favourite flower. It's my favourite colour, and it's my favourite flavour too. There's so much you can do with wild violets. I'll be picking these flowers, taking them home, and I'll be making a violet syrup with them. So for about a cup of the flowers, you only want the purple petals. For a cup of the flowers, you add a cup of sugar and a cup of water. It's a really interesting trick actually. If you take the flowers, put them in a jar, pour in your boiling water, the water turns an absolutely wonderful lavender colour. You then let that set as deep a colour as you want and melt into it some sugar, and there you have a wonderful little violet syrup. It's great as a little treat, a little dressing on things. It's also good for your health, so many health benefits. Or you can, if you've got a really sweet tooth, you can take these lovely flowers, coat them in sugar and have crystallized violets to put on cakes and things. We've certainly got plenty of wild primula here at Teasses. This is absolutely beautiful wild primrose. Love that buttery colour on the flower. And it's another really fantastic plant to go foraging for. There's again so much that you can do with it. A recipe that I've recently tried out, it's an old recipe that I read in an ethnobotany book about Scotland. It's a really, really old recipe. I think the book I read it in goes back to like the 16th century. And so it's quite a basic recipe to make primrose curd. So you're just taking your primrose flowers, putting them in sugar, and leave them in the sugar for as long as you like to get the wonderful flowery, delicate, sweet flavour. And then you just make a lovely curd. It's delicious on warm toast. Lots of other things you can do. You can eat the flowers in a salad just as they are. You can make face packs with them. The primrose is supposed to represent purity, and so traditionally was used in lots of cosmetic treatments, I suppose you would call them, for brides just before they got married in days gone by. It's absolutely beautiful flower. And the leaf as well, you can include that in your curd recipe because it's got a lovely flavour to it as well. Now I'm pretty sure everybody who has been unfortunate enough to come up close and personal with this plant will recognise it immediately. This is the nettle. And this has been used in Celtic ethnobotany for millennia. It's used to create a lovely dye. You can get a lovely dye from it. The fibres of the stems on older nettle plants can be used to make twine. But at this time of the year, the value in the nettle, of course, is in picking the leaves to make nettle soup. You'll find recipes all over the internet for nettle soup, and it makes this wonderful green, very rich in iron, delicious soup. It's got this kind of sludgy, unappetizing colour, but it tastes great with plenty of garlic put into it and a decent vegetable stock. Lovely with crusty bread and butter. So it's a firm favourite of foragers and often overlooked by anybody who's not a forager because it's just so nasty when it prickles you. It isn't just the pretty and the herbaceous which are extremely useful when you're out foraging in the spring. Of course, trees provide an abundance of flavourings and vitamins, and this one here, the Norway Spruce, grows everywhere in Scotland. It was used as a plantation tree. It's your traditional Christmas tree, and you might know from having it in your house at Christmas that the needles have this wonderful citrusy smell, which you can use to infuse it into alcohol to get this beautiful citrusy. I think it smells a bit like a caramelized orange. You can take the very young tips, they're not quite ready yet, but the very young tips of the tree. There's some there at the back actually, and you can just chop them up, put them through your salads. They're a bit coarse, so if you go for the younger ones, they're softer. You can chop them through salad, you can make them into pesto, you could treat them like you would treat something like rosemary, and they would go quite nice even with chicken. High in vitamins, very high in vitamin C, and so it really is one of the beneficial plants, not just for flavour, but has an actual benefit towards your health. And you'll find it absolutely everywhere. If you want to make an infusion with it, quite simply pick off your needles, pop them into whichever alcohol you're using. You can use base vodka alcohol or a gin. If you want to make it more of an infusion, you would also make some sugar into it, and you'll get this wonderful citrusy drink. So here's an example of the young, bright buds from the spruce, and you just won't believe the flavour that you get from those vibrant little buds. They're tiny, and one bite of them, you get all this beautiful citrusy flavour. I think it's got a little bit of an oddly little refreshing dill flavour to it. Be delicious with cucumbers. In fact, that's probably what I'm going to try. Another wonderful native shrubby tree is the hawthorn. These are the lovely bright young foliage. Of course, you can't eat the berries, but you'll recognise the berry. You can eat the berry if you cook it. And it was a very firm favourite during the war years. The hips and the haws is what they were called. People would go out and collect them to produce vitamin C jams. But without cooking them, they're pretty nasty, so don't be tempted. However, the foliage, starting to get to, you wouldn't want to wait too much longer. They get very dark and waxy, but when they're young, you can just eat them, you can mix them through salads. They've got this wonderful sort of fresh, sort of appley flavour. They've got an apple skin texture. And of course, I couldn't do a foraging video in May without coming to the wonderful and highly fragrant wild garlic, or ramsons. Fantastic out in April all the way through to sort of June. They've just got these wonderful broad leaves. Just gotta be careful you don't confuse them with lots of other things. Wonderful broad leaves, very strong, fiery garlic. And they're just coming into flower bud. You can eat these. These are great if you're making some kind of rice and just blanch these or quickly cook them with oil. Really beautiful. And then when they open up into these clusters of white flowers, you can mix that through salads. Wild garlic here next to its cousin, the few-flowered leek. And this is another sort of wild allium. Got this wonderful sort of leaky smell and flavour, and you can treat them just like very tiny little leeks. Just blanch them, and they make for a delicious accompaniment to a dinner. You can eat the whole thing with the allium, the leaf, the bulb and the flower. And on our workshop, our foraging workshop, we had planned to make some wild garlic pesto, but another delicious thing to make is a sort of wild garlic chimichurri. So shred up your wild garlic or pulverize it in a blender. Some cider vinegar, lemon juice, salt and pepper, and some parsley, and it's delicious. I had it last night with lamb, but really good with any of the beef or some of the stronger fish. Really tasty. Love it. Now, of course, I have to say, you must be so careful when you're out collecting wild herbs, trees, flowers, seeds, anything from the plants. And I would say, certainly, unless you're absolutely certain, don't go anywhere near fungi, mushrooms, or toadstools. Plants are some of the most toxic things in the world, and that includes plenty of our native flora. So unless you look like me and you look like you come from the woods, make sure you seek out an expert, somebody who knows what they're talking about. You can read as much as you like online, you'll get loads of information from books, but until you're actually out on a guided walk with somebody who knows what they're talking about, you really are taking a bit of a chance. So get out there, eat weeds, but make sure you know what you're picking and how to treat it and what you're doing with it. But get out there, enjoy wild foraging, and look out for any of our foraging workshops that we have coming up at Teasses.